Hello, I'm Paul Beckwith. I'm with the University of Ottawa Laboratory for Paleoclimatology, also with Carleton University Department of Geography and Environmental Studies. So in this video, I'd like to sort of clarify some of my views and thoughts on the possibility of near-term human extinction, which I'm not a proponent for. I think it's pretty crazy stuff. I think it's mostly nonsense. It's non-science based, and I'll talk a little bit about more about why I feel this way. And right now I'm in Hogsback Falls Park in Ottawa, and the sun's about to set, so it's a beautiful area here. We've had very warm days. Today was +4. The last couple of days were about +8, 9, 10 degrees. Before then it was pretty cold, and we've had lots of snow. So we've got good water flow here. The rock around here was set down around the Ordovician period, and it's a fault line actually. And where there's a fault line, the rock is very stressed, and very stressed rock undergoes erosion much more quickly. So this is why the water pathway eroded away this channel and the falls and so on. So I'll take you on a little tour of it as I discuss things. So one of the first things that is actually rather remarkable is the amount of flack that I get. If you're in this sort of thought that we're undergoing near-term human extinction, and the numbers have varied, call it what you want, call it 18 months, call it 3 years or 5 years. I mean, I think all those types of numbers are absolutely ridiculous. But, if you're in that type of frame of thought, somebody like myself comes along and I say, don't worry, it's not going to happen. You think people would be relieved? You think that would be, they'd be happy about that? But no, I mean, they attack me. They bring up all kinds of reasons for it not to happen and for their worldview to be correct. So I think that's pretty interesting. One of the things about group thinking or echo chambers is the inability to accept any other point of view other than the one that you have. So people are so absolutely convinced that it's game over that they'll attack anybody. One of the biggest proponents of near-term human extinction, who travels around giving talks and things, if you tell him he's wrong, you argue, his point, you're a troll, or you're in a derogatory fashion, you're a non-ecologist, a non-biologist, you're only an engineer, you're only a physicist, what do you know about the systems? And anyway, I find that really rather interesting. So, I try to figure out the psychology of what's going on with people. For many years I've talked about a human tipping point and understanding on the climate issue, where people go from not accepting that the problem even exists to basically throwing up their hands, saying, "Oh, there's nothing we can do. We're finished." And when there's enough, there's somewhere in between there, right? There's it's not all or nothing. It's not black and white. There's a lot of gray area in this. There's a lot of different components of human society, and there's no question that we're undergoing wrenching changes in our climate system, and as a result we're getting wrenching changes in political systems and things like that. There's no question about that. There's no question that we're in a climate change emergency. We need to slash fossil fuel emissions. We need to pull CO2 out of the atmosphere with carbon dioxide removal deployment technique. And we also need to cool the Arctic. We need to cool the planet so that we keep the sea ice up in the Arctic and the snow cover, and we don't rocket up into greatly accelerated climate change and warming. So we have to do all of these things, and there's tremendous opposition. Some of the things that one of the favorite things that people try to accuse me of is that, hey, I want to keep the status quo going, with these views. No, not at all. I've never said that. So why can a person make a living basically going around telling people they're all screwed, they're all going to die in a few years? Why do people go out and listen to this? What is the advantage to them of hearing this? And one of the things that I see is that there's, so look, let's do a pros and cons analysis of this. So what are the cons, first of all, of having this view that we've all had it? Well, one of the cons is you're not the most popular person at a party. A lot of people, in fact, they'll keep their views to themselves because, when they do talk about their views with family or close friends, they're told, that's ridiculous, you're crazy, there's no way, so there's a lot of opposition, obviously, to that type of thinking. So, in fact, people will lose friends, relationships will end, things like that can happen. That's a very powerful con. So what are the pros? There has to be pros, or there wouldn't be so many people thinking this. So the pros are, it's kind of liberating. If you think the whole planet is going, all humans will be extinct in a matter of years, it really takes the pressure off you. You really can just live in the moment. You can say there's no future, I don't need to save any money, don't need to think about long-term future, don't need to worry about education, don't need to worry about learning, don't need to worry about anything, in fact, to just live an existence of, very little responsibility. So I think, this is appealing to a lot of people, I think, to have this feeling. Also, there's a feeling of superiority, with that type of thinking. There's a feeling like, you know better than everybody else. You know better than most of the scientists in the world, most of the engineers in the world. You walk around in public and you have this sort of feeling that you know something that most other people don't know at all. And you may have tried to communicate that to other people, then they think you're crazy, so you just give up. So now you find this, group online where you get a lot of different like-minded people, with similar thoughts, and it might make dealing with it a lot easier. So I'm not sure. I mean, there's other, but a lot of people with this type of view have very inflexible thoughts. Like, they'll just ignore evidence. And what really gets me is there's complete opposition to people who actually want to try to do something, who actually want to try to implement some solutions or methods to slow down abrupt climate change, to, restore ecosystems, to have a positive future. And any views like that are labeled by this hopium term, which is, hope and opium, right? The contraction of those two words. And it's almost like having hope is a bad thing. You can't have hope. There's no hope for humanity. Well, how on earth do you know everything about what's going to happen in the future? Like, you just don't. So, what's the mentality of a lot of people that feel this way? I don't know, maybe they're miserable in their life. Maybe things haven't gone very well. Maybe, the idea that everybody's gonna, life is not fair, nobody said it's fair, and the idea maybe that all life is coming down is an attractive feeling to people. It's an opinion, and it's a feeling, and it's not based on the science, it's not based on the reality. And ask yourself questions when you're talking to people who have these views of near-term human extinction. Ask questions like, what have their views been in the past? Have they modified their time limits? Are they always increasing or decreasing the amount of time before we're supposed to be going extinct? Also, Ask questions about the arguments. Like, tell me how 450 nuclear reactors can suddenly stop having operators at about the same time within a period of just a few years. Like, give me a break. I mean, the idea of extinctions in the past, they took thousands of years to happen. It was very short. It was a blink of the eye on a geological timescale. But on a human timescale, it was years, hundreds to thousands of years. Now, sure, we're changing everything on our planet much faster now than has happened in the past, but we just don't know how this is going to play out. You know, there is lots of feedback systems. Now, one fellow in particular has written that there's 60 different feedbacks. These are all positive feedbacks he's talking about that are accelerating the change of climate. So let me ask you, is this an unbiased look at all the feedbacks at the total climate system? No, absolutely not, because where are the negative feedbacks listed? There's multiple strong negative feedbacks, both physical in the climate system, in the geopolitical and human systems. You know, humans are capable of responding quickly, turning on a dime when their back is up against the wall. One example would be a strong human negative feedback would be taking that $600 or $700 billion US military budget and saying climate change is the threat, not some other nation. So let's apply that money to retooling our society to renewable energy. Let's apply that money to carbon dioxide removal. Let's apply that money to solar radiation management. This is the enormous negative feedback that is never discussed. So this is a clue. If somebody gives you 60 different positive feedbacks that are going to take out humanity and don't even consider the possibility or list or try to come up with negative feedbacks that stabilize the system, you know this is a very biased point of view, and this is not science at all. It's not looking at both sides of the equation, if you like. You know, it's magnifying the negative and minimizing, you know, anything positive that can be done. So this is another very good clue. Also, you know, going around telling people that we're all going extinct is basically a business, okay? You know, we tried to, myself and a couple colleagues, you know, tried to get this guy to speak to a room full of engineers about how bad it was and about some of the things that we can do. And, you know, it wasn't a desirable thing to do for him. So it was going to be $1,000 an hour, independent of the number of people showing up, etc. You know, which just isn't reasonable. This gentleman also has, you know, apparently he gets paid about $500 an hour to testify, and for some of his talks, he's being paid up to $10,000 for giving his talk. And this is straight from the mouth of his organizer. Okay, I have evidence, there's proof of this. I mean, there's clear proof, and there's multiple witnesses that this statement was made. So, you know, there's a money element to this. Now, as far as me, no, I mean, I haven't been threatened by anybody. The university system, it's important for people to understand how independent people are in the university system. You know, if you have a lot of grant money and stuff, then that's different. But I teach at the university. I don't depend on grants. I depend on donors from people. And, you know, I'm very happy to produce my tax forms. I mean, I've been living under the poverty line for years. You know, I've been thinking that this is the most important thing, and money hasn't been a huge issue to me. And I'm just trying to make it sustainable so I can continue doing all this work and all these videos. But, you know, I'm perfectly willing to provide my tax returns, something Donald Trump won't do. And I recommend that maybe you know, people that would go around telling everybody they're going to die might produce their tax returns, and this is a business. So ask all the questions. Don't accept things. Ask the deep questions.